Illusion magic suffers from a problem of arbitrariness in tabletop RPGs. When you cast an illusion spell or ability or some sort of tech, if you're playing a sci-fi game, you're creating something that is more or less real depending on the level of the spell. And once a character has reason to doubt this thing is real,
I don't believe you.
then they are entitled to some sort of check. In 5th edition, that's an investigations check, to determine whether they continue to believe this thing, scent, sound, whatever, is real, or whether they've seen through your illusion magic. But that bypasses that first moment of doubt. When the goblin chases your party down a dead end, and all of a sudden it reaches this wall of stone, does the goblin have reasons to doubt this wall is here? Does it know that this is a 15-foot tunnel and not a 10-foot tunnel that it'll start inspecting it? That doubt, that decision, is usually left to DM fiat, and many players will object to a dungeon master just jumping straight to, the goblin starts checking around to see what's going on. No. Why doesn't the goblin just backtrack and start trying to find the other tunnels and figure out where it lost us? Well, because when I started playing, at least in the 90s, Dungeon Masters had already come up with the, well, magic's ubiquitous and it's everywhere, and so is illusion magic. So every monster knows that this could be illusion, and they're starting to check on it, and they're trying to disbelieve it. But that's a little weird, isn't it? Why wouldn't monsters also know about, I don't know, wall of stone? Why don't they think that's what it is? Why don't they think it's a pass-through wall? Why don't they think it's move earth? Why don't they think it's any other number of things that are just as likely as the illusion magic? Before we talk about how we do that and how we balance this and where it works, there are buttons down there. They're called subscribe and thumbs up, and there's comments. And any of those would be super appreciated. I can't imagine any YouTuber likes asking for this kind of stuff, but this is the kind of stuff that we need to level up in the world of YouTube, so it's the price that I have to pay. Back to Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeon Masters kind of fell into two camps for the reasons for this, and some reasons were better than others, and some fit styles of games more than others. The first was the person that kind of just wanted to not have to make those answers. It was like, well, when I make an answer for a goblin, and then I make an answer for a gold dragon, players tend to object when the answers aren't the same. Even though a goblin and a gold dragon are very different, and they had very different sensory abilities, the players would object because they really wanted out of fighting the gold dragon, but not out of fighting the goblins. And why can't we get that answer here instead of the answer that we're getting? So it's just easier if I just say, nope, always going straight to checks. Every time, all the time. Because I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to fight. The other camp was the players that came from a more wargamey style of game. They wanted something that was purely numbers, that they could balance out. I've got my troll on this side, I've got my adventurers on this side, and I know this is balanced and this is a fair fight. Okay, but nobody wants a fair fight. Certainly not in war. Yeah, if you play like Warhammer, you see all the enemies on the other side and the forces are balanced, but that's because that's a game and there is a winner and a loser and the two people are evenly matched. As Dungeon Masters, we are not evenly matched with the players, and the players don't want to be evenly matched with us. I don't really believe in balanced encounters. I often throw encounters at them that are like kind of sort of balanced, where I'm like, yeah, you could probably do it. And then figure out what they're going to surprise me with. And often that comes in the shape of illusions or some other magic to alter the playing field, to make it something other than what I had intended it to be. Illusion magic is great for that. And that happens in real wars as well. Take, for example, my favorite example from the Punic Wars, the Second Punic War, Carthage against Rome, where Hannibal is marching through Italy and Fabian is trying to contain him because Fabian has long since figured out Hannibal's forces are maybe better trained, maybe better equipped, certainly more loyal, and he might just be a better general than I am. So my best tactic is to not fight him. My best tactic is to cut him off from all his supply lines. Fortunately for Fabian, eventually Hannibal wanders into the valley of Ager Falarnus. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry, Italy, if it's still called that. And Hannibal is trapped in there. Rivers blocks some of the passes, but Fabian controls all the other exits. And he tells his troops, no, don't go in after him. That's what he wants. He wants a battle. He's going to win a battle. So just hold the exits. We'll starve him out. It's cool. But Hannibal wants out. So during the night, Hannibal tries to escape. The Roman legions see all the torches moving through the valley and they go, ha ha, we got him. And against the advice of Fabian, they go chasing out after Hannibal, leaving the garrisons. And when they get there, of course, it's not Hannibal. Hannibal has gathered up all the oxen and has tied torches to their horns and sent them out into the woods in a stampede. And while they've all left their garrisons, Hannibal escapes out one of the side passes. He is using an illusion. He is making it seem like the army is someplace when he's actually someplace else, and he escapes out of it. No general wants to fight an even battle. They want to come home, and they want their soldiers to come home, we hope, and they want their country to win, for better or worse. They don't want to fight an even battle, and neither do your players. They want to stack the odds, and we should reward them for thinking like that and trying to stack the odds. I don't really want to turn this channel into something where it's like,
here are the 5 rules to make your Dungeons & Dragons game super epic.
That's not really my thing, but whenever someone wants to cast an illusion in a Dungeons & Dragons game for me, I allow them to use a perform check with their primary stat. So perform intelligence for a wizard, perform charisma, which it normally would be for a bard or a sorcerer. And that is countered by the DC of the passive perception of the monster. And that allows me to say things like, if you have the feat for quick-witted, smart, learning, actor, or keen mind, and give players advantage on their perform checks when they are crafting illusions. Because to me, illusions are magical art. You are trying to paint a painting. Imagine right now, as you close your eyes, what a beholder looks like. And imagine you had to draw that with illusionary light on a kind of Star Trek holodeck. It probably wouldn't look a lot like an actual beholder. It looked like a balloon animal. And it wouldn't convince the goblin, but someone that is good at the perform skill or has taken these kind of feats might. There are people that are really good at replicating something that they've only heard once or seen once, and that's the keen mind to me. Yes, it allows you to tell where north is all the time and that kind of stuff, but I'm adding to it to honor someone that took this feat, to give them not really combat abilities, but something that they could use to make their combat lives better and to give their party advantage. It also means that when I need to give something disadvantage or I need to give it advantage on its perception check, I can rule that without the players putting up much of a fuss. Take, for example, the Asterian's Labyrinth, the Minotaur's Lair. There are werebores in there, and there is Asterian. If they run down, like the Goblin example before, and they run down tunnels and they erect a false wall, and the werebores see it, I would say the werebores don't get any advantage on the check. It's just their passive perception. They know the labyrinth, but not super well. They're kind of guests of Asterian here, guests of the Minotaur. And they probably don't stay here because he might kill them just because he might. So they leave, and they're not super familiar with all the tunnels. They do all look alike. But the Minotaur, on the other hand, has abilities that specifically say they know the labyrinth as the back of their hand. So for him, I might say he doesn't have to make a check. He just sees through it. Or if I'm feeling bad for the players because they've gotten their butts kicked, I might go, he gets advantage on his perception check, or he's entitled to a perception check to notice, wait a second, there should be a tunnel here. And that feels fair to the players because I can point at the building and go, well, I gave you the keen mind, so I am giving the Minotaur this. And yeah, that's fair. And I can get away with those kind of things, giving the players advantage when I need to, giving the monsters advantage when I feel like that's right for that monster. It also means that feats like Keen Mind or Perform, or taking Perform at all for a wizard, becomes something more appealing to them than just taking whatever the cookie cutter build is, and every wizard ends up being the exact same wizard, just with slightly different backgrounds, with different accents, whatever it is, because those add up when you've got a full drama character for a wizard as opposed to the bookworm wizard. On the player end, I think one of the things that comes up against dungeon masters is believability. When my players try to get illusions, certainly the first time, they usually go for something grand. You're fighting bugbears in the woods, and you go for the beholder, or you go for an illithid, or a Tarask, or something that's going to gobble them up. The bugbears have never seen any of those. And it's super weird that it's here. In that moment that they go,
"What in the world can that be?"
That's the moment of doubt where they are now entitled to an investigation check, because it doesn't make sense here. As opposed to being chased by those same bugbears in the woods, you say, circle up, and you make an illusion of a tree that's surrounding the party. That makes more sense. The bugbears don't know every tree in the forest. That's unfair. So I wouldn't have the bugbears even make a check. I probably wouldn't even honor their passive perception in that case. I'd say they just go straight by it. They are rushing around looking for the elf, human, gnome, whatever that they were going to have for breakfast tomorrow, instead of looking at the 47th birch tree that they passed in the woods. Believability in your illusions makes it easier to sell to your dungeon master as, yeah, the monster would believe it here. In a dungeon, a wall of fire across a three-way, as opposed to just making the stone that the whole dungeon is made out of, makes more sense. The other problem is one of attitude at the table. Every table is different, and every player kind of adds to it. It's not just the dungeon master's table, although they certainly set the strongest part of the tone. If you're playing with a bunch of other kind of kick in the door action adventurers that really want to play Conan, and you use an illusion to rob them of that ability, they're going to feel slighted. They're not going to want to do it. You dive down that corner, you escape the goblins, you erect an illusion. The other party members might go, cool, and just assume you're trying to hide yourself. In the meantime, we're going to stand out here and we're going to kill the goblins as soon as they come around with our swords, maces, and bows. Okay, what did I bother taking that spell for? You're playing with a bunch of people that want to blow off some steam. My best friend, Arna, likes that kind of game. They like a Conan fantasy. He wants to play that kind of game. He wants to slaughter the goblins. That's fun for him. He likes that. He's not a psychopath. He just likes blowing off some steam and killing some monsters at the end of the day, collecting some loot and turning it in and doing a heroic deed every now and then that involves monster slaying. And if I was a player in that game and I created that illusion, I spoiled his fun. Don't spoil their fun, add to it. Instead of just creating the wall, say, hey, everybody back behind the wall and hold your action for when the goblins go in front of the illusionary wall. Dungeon Master, can we do that? Now, if that was me, your dungeon master is your dungeon master, I would say, yeah, sure. I'm going to have you reroll initiative, though, because this is such a change in the circumstances. This is really a different battle than the chase we had going through this dungeon. So the goblins are all going to react at being surprised and caught off guard, and you're going to react at different speeds as they react. So we're going to reroll initiative. I'm going to keep the hit points and all that kind of stuff and figure out where it goes, and you get a surprise round for finding out something's there. I am going to have them roll perception checks to figure out whether they hear people in the tunnel. They don't know necessarily where it's from, but they do get that right to go, I can hear them coming close. And when you come out of the side wall, they were already ready for combat. And my players would accept something like that. Okay, that's fair. And you still get to use the illusion. You still get to give advantage to your party, and you still get to honor the fact that some of these players, some of these tables, they really just want to murder a bunch of goblins, collect the loot, and turn it back into the town and say, hey, here's your bag of goblin ears. We did a good deed for the day, right? I really like illusion magic. I like that it's kind of, magical art, that someone is creating something and trying to make someone believe that it's real and that it can change encounters entirely, that it shows what the player that's creating it thinks would work on the monster and thinks would work in this dungeon or situation. I just don't like it when I have to make a call that would counteract what a player thinks about this situation without honoring to some degree the character's agency in it. When the player doesn't have an idea about what would be a proper wall in it, it's not necessarily the player's fault. That's because the player is not in a dungeon. They're in my living room. And it might be because I didn't properly describe the dungeon, and now they're on the hook for that. The character knows what the dungeon looks like. They are in the dungeon. And I want to find a way to honor that. And that's why I come up with using a perform check to say the character It's not the player. The character can see this stuff. They get some chance that is outside what the player does to represent what they see when they create this illusion. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember, you're a player too. Try to have some fun. Bye. Is this fun? Is this fun? I don't think it's fun for her. That does not look like a face that's enjoying this. Back in the lab.